In a small, lively town where life moved at its own pace, an elderly man named Walter could often be found sitting on a folding chair outside the local grocery store. His weathered hands clutched a bundle of brightly colored American flags, each one neatly rolled and secured with rubber bands. Walter wasn't there to make a fortune. He was raising money for veterans' charities, a cause close to his heart. For years, he had faithfully set up his little stand in the same spot, hoping to inspire others to remember the sacrifices made by so many. But lately, things had changed. People seemed too busy or distracted to notice him. They hurried past, their eyes glued to their phones or shopping lists, barely giving Walter a second glance. Some even smirked as they walked by, muttering under their breath about how old-fashioned his efforts were. A few went as far as rolling their eyes, questioning why anyone would bother selling flags in this day and age. Walter tried not to let it get to him. He reminded himself that what mattered most was the cause, not the criticism. Still, the sting of rejection lingered deep within him, gnawing at his spirit. On this particular afternoon, however, something unusual caught Walter's attention. Across the street, a sleek black SUV stood parked along the curb. It looked out of place among the modest sedans and pickup trucks that usually lined the road. Its tinted windows hid whoever was inside, making it impossible to tell if anyone was even sitting behind the wheel. At first, Walter dismissed it as just another random car passing through town. But as time went on, the vehicle remained stationary, almost like it was waiting for something, or someone. Curiosity began to tug at Walter's mind. He glanced over occasionally, trying to figure out who might be inside. Was it someone lost? Or perhaps a parent picking up groceries while keeping an eye on their kids? Whatever the reason, the mysterious SUV added a touch of intrigue to an otherwise ordinary day. Meanwhile, life around Walter carried on as usual. Shoppers came and went, chatting animatedly or rushing to complete errands before heading home. Yet no matter how much activity swirled around him, Walter couldn't shake the feeling that the SUV was somehow connected to him. As the minutes ticked by, Walter returned to his routine, straightening the flags on his table and offering polite smiles to passers-by. Most ignored him completely, but a group of teenagers sauntered over, laughing loudly and clearly looking for entertainment. One of them pointed at Walter's faded cap and worn jacket, mocking him without hesitation. Another snatched a flag from the table, tossing it carelessly onto the ground before walking away with a sneer. Walter sighed deeply, his shoulders sagging under the weight of their ridicule. Slowly he bent down to pick up the discarded flag, brushing off the dirt as best he could. Just as Walter was about to sit back in his chair, the driver's side door of the black SUV suddenly opened. Out stepped a tall, commanding figure dressed in a leather jacket and aviator sunglasses. His presence was magnetic, drawing immediate attention from everyone nearby. Heads turned, whispers rippled through the crowd, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. The man exuded confidence and authority, yet there was also a kindness in his demeanor that put people at ease. Though no one recognized him right away, his arrival felt significant, as though fate itself had intervened. Walter watched as the stranger approached, his footsteps steady and deliberate. There was an air of purpose about him, as if he knew exactly why he was there. As the man drew closer, Walter noticed the subtle details, the firm set of his jaw, the calm intensity in his gaze, and the unmistakable aura of someone who commanded respect without having to ask for it. The crowd parted slightly, creating a path for him as he made his way toward Walter's humble stand. For the first time all day, the old man felt a flicker of hope amidst the sea of indifference. Little did he know, this moment would change everything, not just for him, but for the entire town. The man strode forward with a quiet confidence that demanded attention. Every step he took seemed deliberate, as though the entire world had slowed down just to watch him move. Walter's heart raced as the stranger drew nearer, his polished boots clicking softly against the pavement. The crowd, which had been buzzing with chatter and laughter only moments before, fell eerily silent. Even the teenagers who had mocked Walter earlier stopped in their tracks, their smirks fading into expressions of curiosity and awe. Something about this man was different, undeniably powerful yet strangely comforting. When he finally reached Walter's stand, the man paused for a moment, removing his aviator sunglasses with slow precision. His eyes scanned the scene, taking in every detail. The flags neatly arranged on the table, Walter's worn jacket, and the faint look of exhaustion etched into the old man's face. Then, without hesitation, he extended a hand toward Walter. "Thank you for what you're doing here," he said, his voice warm but firm. It carried a tone of sincerity that resonated deeply, leaving no room for doubt about his intentions. Walter blinked, momentarily stunned. He wasn't sure how to respond. For weeks, or maybe even months, he had felt invisible, like just another forgotten relic of a bygone era. Now standing before him was someone who not only noticed him, but also understood the significance of his mission. Shaking off his surprise, Walter accepted the handshake, feeling the strength in the man's grip. I'm just trying to help," Walter stammered, his voice tinged with humility. "These flags, they mean something. They remind us of those who gave everything." The stranger nodded thoughtfully, his expression softening further. Without skipping a beat, he turned to face the crowd, his presence commanding instant respect. The silence grew heavier as people shifted uncomfortably, sensing that they were about to witness something important. "This man," the stranger began, his voice rising slightly so everyone could hear, "is honoring those who fought for our freedom, men and women who sacrificed their lives so we could live in peace. And yet, some of you laugh at him. Some of you mock him because you think his efforts are outdated or irrelevant." His words cut through the air like a blade, striking a nerve with everyone present. The teenagers who had teased Walter earlier exchanged guilty glances, their earlier bravado melting away under the weight of the stranger's gaze. Parents holding their children's hands tightened their grip, suddenly aware of the lesson unfolding right in front of them. Shopkeepers leaning against door frames straightened up, while elderly folks sitting on nearby benches leaned forward, hanging on to every word. The atmosphere had shifted completely. What had started as an ordinary afternoon now felt charged with meaning. "If you can't respect what this man is doing," the stranger continued, his tone unwavering, "then maybe you don't deserve the privilege of living in this country. Maybe you've forgotten what it means to be grateful." Each sentence landed like a hammer blow, forcing people to confront their own indifference and apathy. Walter sat frozen in his chair, overwhelmed by the sudden turn of events. He hadn't expected anyone to defend him, let alone someone with such authority and conviction. Tears welled up in his eyes, though he tried to blink them away unnoticed. Then, in one fluid motion, the stranger reached into the pocket of his leather jacket and pulled out a thick wad of cash. The bills were crisp and neatly stacked, clearly prepared ahead of time. Without hesitation, he placed the money on Walter's table, right next to the flags. "Buy some more flags, and keep up the good work," he said simply, his lips curving into a small, reassuring smile. Walter stared at the money, then back at the man, utterly speechless. Before he could muster a response, the stranger slipped his sunglasses back on and turned to leave. As the mysterious figure walked away, the crowd erupted into murmurs. People whispered excitedly, piecing together clues about who he might be. Someone gasped loudly, pointing at him and exclaiming, "That's Chuck Norris." The name rippled through the gathering like wildfire, sparking disbelief and admiration in equal measure. Heads turned, phones came out, and within seconds, dozens of people were snapping photos or recording videos. But Chuck didn't stop. He climbed back into the black SUV, closing the door behind him with a quiet click. The engine roared to life and the vehicle eased away from the curb, disappearing down the street as quickly as it had arrived. For a long moment, no one spoke. The crowd lingered, processing what had just happened. Walter sat motionless, still clutching the edge of the table, his mind racing. He had gone from being ridiculed and ignored to being defended by none other than Chuck Norris, a man known worldwide for his strength, integrity, and larger-than-life persona. It was almost too incredible to believe. Slowly, reality began to sink in, and Walter felt a warmth spreading through his chest, a mix of gratitude, pride, and renewed determination. One by one, members of the crowd approached Walter's stand. Some apologized profusely for their earlier behavior, promising to do better. Others expressed admiration for his dedication and asked how they could contribute. A young mother handed over a $20 bill, explaining that her son loved learning about history and wanted to support the cause. An older gentleman bought 5 flags, saying he planned to give them to his grandchildren as reminders of their heritage. By the end of the day, Walter's table was nearly empty, and the stack of cash left by Chuck Norris had grown significantly, thanks to the generosity of strangers inspired by his actions. Word of what happened spread rapidly throughout the town. Social media posts flooded timelines, with captions like "Chuck Norris supports veterans" and "Never underestimate an old man selling flags." Local news outlets picked up the story, interviewing witnesses and highlighting Walter's lifelong commitment to honoring veterans. Within hours, the incident became the talk of the community, sparking conversations about patriotism, gratitude, and the importance of recognizing unsung heroes. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the parking lot, Walter packed up his belongings with a sense of fulfillment he hadn't felt in years. The day had started with ridicule and rejection, but it ended with hope and unity. Though Chuck Norris himself had vanished as mysteriously as he'd appeared, his impact remained. Walter knew that this was only the beginning, that tomorrow would bring new opportunities to carry the torch of remembrance and inspire others to join the cause. For the first time in a long time, he went home with a spring in his step and a smile on his face, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. By the next morning, Walter's story had spread far beyond the confines of the small town. News outlets picked up the tale, painting a vivid picture of the elderly man who had been mocked for selling flags until a legendary figure stepped in to defend him. Social media buzzed with excitement as videos and photos of Chuck Norris at Walter's stand went viral. People from all over the country were captivated, not just by the dramatic twist involving Chuck, but by the deeper message behind it, the importance of gratitude, respect, and standing up for what matters. Locals couldn't stop talking about it either. At coffee shops, diners, and even school playgrounds, conversations revolved around the events of the previous day. Parents used the story as a teaching moment, explaining to their children why veterans deserve recognition and how simple acts of kindness can spark change. Teachers incorporated it into classroom discussions, encouraging students to think critically about patriotism and community service. Even the teenagers who had laughed at Walter found themselves reflecting on their actions, feeling both ashamed and inspired to do better. Word of mouth wasn't the only thing driving support for Walter's cause. Strangers began showing up at Yale, his stand from neighboring towns, eager to buy flags and contribute to the veterans' charity. Some drove for hours just to meet him in person, wanting to shake his hand and express their admiration. Walter was overwhelmed by the outpouring of love and encouragement. Each interaction filled him with renewed energy, reminding him that his efforts were far from insignificant. What had once felt like a lonely battle now seemed like a shared mission, one that united people from all walks of life. The influx of attention brought more than just flag sales. It opened doors to new opportunities. Local businesses offered to sponsor Walter's initiative, donating supplies or offering free advertising space to promote his work. A nearby printing company volunteered to produce additional flags at cost, ensuring that Walter would never run out again. Schools invited him to speak at assemblies, where he shared heartfelt stories about the brave men and women he sought to honor. His words resonated deeply with students, many of whom left these talks determined to learn more about history and give back to their communities. Even local government officials took notice. The mayor personally visited Walter's stand one afternoon, praising him for his dedication and announcing plans to declare a Veterans Appreciation Day in the town. This special day would feature parades, ceremonies, and educational programs designed to keep the spirit of patriotism alive for future generations. Walter beamed with pride as he accepted the honor, humbled by the fact that his humble efforts had grown into something much bigger than himself. Amidst all the excitement, Chuck Norris remained a central figure in the narrative. Reporters scrambled to track him down, hoping to get an exclusive interview about his role in the incident. But true to his character, Chuck stayed out of the spotlight. When asked for comments, he responded briefly through a spokesperson saying, "I didn't do anything special. Walter's the real hero here." His humility only added to the admiration people felt for him, reinforcing the idea that greatness lies not in seeking recognition, but in doing what's right, without expecting anything in return. Despite his reluctance to engage further, Chuck's influence continued to ripple through the town. Inspired by his example, residents started looking for ways to make a difference in their own lives. Neighbors organized cleanup drives, food banks saw increased donations, and volunteer groups sprang up to tackle various community needs. It was as if Chuck's brief appearance had awakened a collective desire to be better, to treat others with kindness, to value sacrifice, and to take pride in the things that truly mattered. Walter often reflected on the surreal turn of events, marveling at how one man's actions could ignite such profound change. He thought about the moment when Chuck had stepped out of the black SUV, his presence commanding yet gentle. That single act of solidarity had transformed Walter's world, and the world of everyone else involved. It reminded him of something he'd always believed but sometimes struggled to hold on to, that no matter how dark things might seem, there is always hope. There are always people willing to stand up, speak out, and remind us of what's important. As days turned into weeks, Walter noticed subtle shifts in the way people interacted with him. No longer did he feel invisible or dismissed. Instead, he was greeted with smiles, waves, and genuine interest whenever he set up his stand. Children ran up to him asking questions about the flags and the stories behind them. Parents thanked him for keeping the memory of veterans alive, while seniors shared their own memories of loved ones who had served. These moments filled Walter's heart with joy, giving him a renewed sense of purpose. But perhaps the most touching aspect of it all was the connection Walter felt with the community. He realized that his stand wasn't just a place to sell flags. It had become a symbol of unity, a reminder that even in a divided world, people could come together for a common cause. And while he knew that Chuck Norris may never return to the little town, Walter carried the lessons of that fateful day with him wherever he went. Every time he unfurled a flag or handed one to a grateful customer, Walter remembered the power of standing firm in your beliefs even when others doubted you. He thought about the importance of allies, those rare individuals who step forward when you least expect it and remind you that you're not alone. Most of all, he cherished the knowledge that his quiet perseverance had sparked a movement, proving that even the smallest actions can create waves of change. For Walter, this was more than enough. As the weeks passed, Walter's life transformed in ways he could never have imagined. What had once been a solitary mission to sell flags and raise funds for veterans' charities blossomed into something much larger, a movement that touched hearts and inspired action across the town and beyond. The initial spark lit by Chuck Norris's unexpected appearance continued to grow, spreading warmth and purpose wherever it reached. Walter found himself at the center of this whirlwind, humbled yet invigorated by the overwhelming support pouring in from every direction. One of the most remarkable changes was how deeply the community embraced his cause. Schools became eager partners, incorporating lessons about patriotism and sacrifice into their curriculums. Teachers invited Walter to speak during assemblies, where students listened intently as he shared stories of fallen heroes whose courage had shaped the nation. He spoke not just about battles won or lost, but about the ordinary men and women who left behind families, dreams, and futures so others could live freely. His words resonated with young minds, sparking curiosity and respect. Students began writing essays, creating art projects, and even organizing small fundraisers of their own, all inspired by Walter's dedication. The ripple effect extended far beyond the classroom. Local businesses, moved by Walter's story, rallied around him in unprecedented ways. Restaurants hosted flag nights, donating a portion of their proceeds to the veterans' charity. Grocery stores set up collection bins near checkout counters, encouraging customers to contribute spare change. Even the town's annual summer fair took on a patriotic theme, with red, white, and blue decorations adorning booths and stages. A parade was organized, featuring marching bands, floats, and veterans proudly wearing uniforms adorned with medals earned decades ago. At the heart of it all stood Walter, waving to cheering crowds as he rode in a vintage convertible, his weathered face glowing with pride. Yet despite the newfound attention and accolades, Walter remained grounded. He never sought recognition for himself. His focus was always on honoring those who had given everything. But seeing the community come together filled him with a profound sense of fulfillment. For years he had carried the weight of indifference and ridicule alone. Now he felt buoyed by the collective energy of people united by a shared goal. It wasn't just about selling flags anymore. It was about fostering gratitude, teaching history, and ensuring that no one ever forgot the sacrifices made by generations past. The impact also reached individuals in deeply personal ways. One day, a middle-aged man approached Walter's stand, tears streaming down his face. He introduced himself as the son of a Vietnam War veteran who had struggled with PTSD after returning home. "My dad used to tell me stories about serving," the man said, his voice trembling. "But I didn't understand what they meant until now. Your flags, they remind me of him, of everything he went through." He purchased several flags, explaining that he planned to place them at his father's gravesite and share the story with his own children. Moments like these reminded Walter why he had started this journey in the first place, to keep memories alive and ensure that sacrifices were never forgotten. Even those who had once mocked him stepped forward to make amends. The teenagers who had laughed and thrown a flag onto the ground returned weeks later, this time bearing handmade cards and sincere apologies. They explained that they hadn't realized the significance of what Walter was doing and promised to spread awareness among their peers. Walter accepted their apology graciously, telling them that everyone makes mistakes and that real strength lies in learning and growing. Their transformation was a testament to the power of empathy and understanding, qualities that Walter embodied effortlessly. Amidst all the activity, Walter couldn't help but reflect on how dramatically his life had changed. Gone were the lonely days when he sat unnoticed, wondering if anyone cared about the flags he sold. Now, his stand was a hub of connection and conversation, drawing people from all walks of life. Strangers became friends, sharing stories and laughter over cups of coffee while waiting to purchase flags. Families brought their children, turning the experience into a cherished tradition. Walter marveled at how something so simple, a folded piece of fabric, could bring people together in such meaningful ways. The mayor's declaration of Veterans Appreciation Day further cemented the town's commitment to honoring its heroes. On that special day, streets were lined with American flags fluttering in the breeze, and ceremonies were held at local memorials. Veterans were invited to share their experiences, giving residents a first-hand glimpse into the realities of war and service. Walter played a key role in organizing the event, working tirelessly alongside volunteers to ensure everything ran smoothly. When the day finally arrived, the turnout exceeded expectations. Thousands gathered to pay tribute, their applause echoing through the air as veterans marched proudly before them. For Walter, standing amidst the crowd, it was a moment of pure triumph, a culmination of years of quiet perseverance. Despite the success, Walter never lost sight of the person who had ignited this chain reaction, Chuck Norris. Though Chuck remained out of the public eye, his presence loomed large in Walter's mind. Every time someone mentioned his name or recounted the story of the black SUV, Walter felt a surge of gratitude. Chuck's intervention had done more than validate Walter's efforts. It had reminded an entire community of the importance of standing up for what's right. Walter often thought about reaching out to thank him personally, but something held him back. Perhaps it was the knowledge that Chuck didn't seek praise. He simply acted because it was the right thing to do. And maybe, Walter reasoned, that was enough. As the months rolled on, Walter expanded his efforts beyond flag sales. He partnered with local organizations to create programs aimed at supporting veterans and their families. Workshops were held to teach job skills. Counseling services were offered to address mental health challenges, and mentorship initiatives connected younger generations with older ones. These projects gave Walter a renewed sense of purpose, allowing him to channel the momentum of his newfound fame into tangible, lasting change. Through it all, Walter remained humble, deflecting praise and focusing instead on the work ahead. He knew that the road to true progress was long and winding, requiring patience, persistence, and unwavering belief in the cause. Yet he also knew that he wasn't walking it alone. Thanks to the kindness of strangers, the resilience of his community, and the unforgettable moment when Chuck Norris stepped out of that black SUV, Walter had discovered a source of strength he hadn't known existed. It was a strength rooted in unity, compassion, and the enduring power of hope. A strength that would carry him forward, no matter what challenges lay ahead. Years passed, and Walter's legacy continued to grow, becoming a cornerstone of the town's identity. What had begun as a solitary act of selling flags evolved into a vibrant tapestry of community spirit, woven together by shared values of gratitude, remembrance, and service. The town itself seemed transformed, its streets lined with plaques, murals, and monuments commemorating veterans and their sacrifices. At the heart of it all stood Walter, now a beloved figure whose quiet determination had sparked a movement that touched countless lives. One of the most enduring symbols of this transformation was a commemorative plaque installed near the spot where Walter's stand had once been. Engraved with elegant lettering, it read, "In honor of Walter Thompson, a man who reminded us all to remember." Beneath the inscription was an image of an American flag fluttering in the wind, accompanied by a brief description of his journey, from the days when he faced ridicule to the moment Chuck Norris stepped forward and changed everything. The plaque quickly became a local landmark, attracting visitors from neighboring towns who came to pay their respects and learn about the story behind it. Children grew up hearing tales of Walter and the black SUV, stories passed down like folklore, but rooted firmly in truth. Parents told them how one man's courage and another's compassion had ignited a wave of kindness that swept through the community. Teachers incorporated these lessons into history classes, emphasizing not just the facts of wars fought and won, but the human stories behind them, the families left behind, the dreams cut short, and the resilience required to rebuild shattered lives. For many young people, Walter's name became synonymous with integrity and perseverance, qualities they aspired to embody in their own lives. Walter himself became a fixture at community events, always ready with a smile and a story for anyone who approached him. Though age had slowed his pace, his passion remained undiminished. He attended parades, school assemblies, and charity fundraisers, using every opportunity to remind people of the importance of honoring those who served. His speeches were never long or overly polished. Instead, they were heartfelt and relatable, filled with anecdotes about the veterans he had known and the lessons they had taught him. People listened intently, hanging on to his every word, because they understood that Walter wasn't just speaking, he was sharing a piece of his soul. The ripple effects of his efforts extended far beyond the town's borders. Inspired by his story, other communities began organizing similar initiatives, creating networks of support for veterans and their families. Flags bearing Walter's name appeared at rallies and memorials across the country, each one carrying a message of hope and unity. Social media campaigns kept his mission alive, encouraging people to share photos of themselves holding flags alongside messages of gratitude. Hashtags like "Remember with Walter" and "My Flags for Heroes" trended regularly, ensuring that his work reached new audiences year after year. Even as his fame spread, Walter remained deeply connected to the people around him. He cherished the relationships he had built over the years, the friendships forged at his stand, the bonds formed with veterans' families, and the admiration of strangers who saw him as a beacon of hope. These connections sustained him during difficult times, especially as his health began to decline. Age brought its challenges, but Walter faced them with the same quiet strength that had defined his entire life. He refused to let illness dim his spirit, continuing to attend events and meet with supporters whenever possible. As the decades rolled on, the town celebrated milestones tied to Walter's legacy. On the 10th anniversary of Chuck Norris's visit, a grand ceremony was held to honor both men. A bronze statue of Walter was unveiled, depicting him seated at his stand, surrounded by flags. Beside it stood a smaller statue of Chuck Norris, mid-stride as if approaching Walter to offer that life-changing handshake. The statues became instant icons, drawing visitors from all over the world. Many came to reflect on the power of kindness and solidarity, leaving flowers, notes, and small tokens of appreciation at their base. Chuck Norris, though still largely absent from public view, sent a heartfelt letter for the occasion. In it, he reiterated his belief that Walter was the true hero of the story. "I simply did what anyone should have done," he wrote. "Walter is the one who reminded us all of what truly matters. If my actions helped amplify his voice, then I am grateful. But the real credit belongs to him, and to everyone who has carried his mission forward." The letter touched Walter deeply, reaffirming his belief in the goodness of humanity. It also reminded him of something he had always known, that no single person could create lasting change alone. Every donation, every volunteer hour, every flag sold and story shared had contributed to the movement's success. Walter often said that the greatest lesson he learned was the importance of community, that together, people could achieve far more than any individual ever could. Despite his declining health, Walter continued to inspire those around him. Even in his final years, he found joy in the simplest things: watching children wave flags at parades, seeing veterans honored at ceremonies, and knowing that his efforts had created a legacy that would endure long after he was gone. When he passed away peacefully at the age of 92, the entire town mourned his loss. Flags flew at half-staff and tributes poured in from across the nation. Yet amid the sadness, there was also celebration. For Walter's life had been one of purpose, love, and unwavering dedication to a cause greater than himself. At his funeral, hundreds gathered to pay their respects, including veterans, students, and families whose lives he had touched. Speakers recounted memories of Walter's kindness, humor, and steadfastness, painting a picture of a man who had lived not for himself, but for others. One speaker, a young woman who had grown up listening to Walter's stories, summed it up perfectly. "He taught us that even the smallest acts can make the biggest difference. He showed us what it means to stand firm in your beliefs, even when the world seems indifferent. And he reminded us that we are stronger together than we are apart." In the years that followed, Walter's legacy lived on, not just in the flags that fluttered proudly across the nation, but in the hearts of those who had been inspired by his example. Schools named scholarships after him, parks bore his name, and annual events continued to celebrate his contributions. Yet perhaps the most profound impact was felt in the everyday choices of ordinary people. Strangers helped one another without expecting thanks. Families taught their children the value of respect and gratitude. Communities rallied around causes bigger than themselves, united by a shared sense of purpose. And whenever someone doubted the power of standing up for what's right, they remembered Walter. And the day Chuck Norris stepped out of a black SUV to remind everyone of the importance of remembering those who sacrificed everything. It was a story that transcended time and place, proving that even in moments of darkness, a single act of courage could light the way forward. For Walter, that was enough. Walter's passing marked the end of an era, but his legacy endured in ways that continued to shape the town and its people for generations. His story became more than just a memory. It evolved into a living tradition, woven into the fabric of daily life. The values he embodied, gratitude, perseverance, and unity, were passed down like heirlooms, cherished by those who understood their significance. Even as the years rolled on, his influence remained palpable, reminding everyone that true heroes are not defined by grand gestures but by consistent acts of kindness and courage. The town itself transformed into a living tribute to Walter's mission. Streets were renamed in his honor. Parks dedicated to veterans bore plaques celebrating his work, and annual events carried forward his vision of remembrance. Every year, on Veterans Appreciation Day, thousands gathered to celebrate the sacrifices of those who served. Flags fluttered proudly from every lamppost, banners adorned storefronts, and parades filled the streets with music, laughter, and tears of gratitude. At the center of it all stood the bronze statues of Walter and Chuck Norris, now weathered by time but still radiating strength and purpose. Children posed for photos beside them, parents recounting the legendary tale of how one man's quiet resolve and another's unexpected intervention sparked a movement. Schools played a pivotal role in keeping Walter's spirit alive. Teachers incorporated his story into lessons about history, civics, and character education, ensuring that each new generation understood the importance of honoring veterans and supporting their families. Students learned not only about the wars fought and the battles won, but also about the human stories behind them. The fathers, mothers, sons, and daughters who left home knowing they might never return. Inspired by Walter's example, many students took up projects of their own, organizing fundraisers, writing letters to active duty soldiers, or volunteering at veteran care facilities. These young people carried forward the torch of remembrance, proving that Walter's message transcended age and circumstance. For veterans and their families, Walter's legacy provided a source of comfort and connection. His efforts had created networks of support that extended far beyond the town, offering resources and camaraderie to those in need. Counseling programs, job training workshops, and mentorship initiatives flourished under the umbrella of the charity he had championed. Veterans found solace in sharing their experiences with others who understood the weight they carried, while families discovered strength in knowing they were not alone. Walter's name became synonymous with hope, a reminder that even in the face of hardship, there was always someone willing to listen, to help, and to remember. Yet perhaps the most profound impact of Walter's life was the way it inspired ordinary people to do extraordinary things. His story served as a blueprint for action, demonstrating that meaningful change often begins with small, consistent efforts. A single flag sold on a street corner could grow into a nationwide movement. A moment of kindness from a stranger could ignite a chain reaction of compassion. People began to see themselves as agents of change, empowered to make a difference in their own communities. Whether it was organizing food drives, cleaning up public spaces, or simply lending a helping hand to someone in need, Walter's example encouraged others to act with intention and empathy. Even decades after his death, Walter's story continued to resonate with new audiences. Books were written about his journey, capturing the essence of his quiet heroism and the transformative power of community. Documentaries aired on television, featuring interviews with those whose lives he had touched, from veterans and teachers to children who grew up hearing his name. Social media kept his memory alive, with hashtags like Remember with Walter trending annually on Veterans Day. People shared photos of flags flying proudly outside their homes, accompanied by messages of gratitude and reflection. In this way, Walter's legacy transcended geography, reaching individuals across the globe and inspiring them to honor the sacrifices of those who came before. Chuck Norris's role in the story remained a highlight of countless retellings, symbolizing the idea that even the most unlikely moments can lead to profound change. Though he never sought recognition for his actions, Chuck's humility only added to the admiration people felt for him. Many viewed his intervention as a metaphor for the power of allyship, the importance of standing up for others, especially when they face adversity. It was a lesson that resonated deeply in a world increasingly focused on justice and equality. For some, Chuck's involvement served as a reminder that heroes come in many forms, and sometimes, all it takes is one brave soul to shine a light in the darkness. As the town grew and changed over the years, Walter's presence lingered in subtle yet significant ways. New residents learned about him through local lore, while longtime residents kept his memory alive through personal stories and traditions. Families visited the plaque and statues together, teaching their children about the man who had reminded everyone to value gratitude and service. Businesses displayed signs bearing his name, pledging to uphold the principles he had championed. And during moments of uncertainty or division, people turned to his example, finding strength in the knowledge that unity was possible when hearts were aligned toward a common goal. In the end, Walter's legacy was not confined to monuments or memorials. It lived on in the actions of those he inspired. From the child waving a flag at a parade to the adult volunteering at a veteran's shelter, his influence rippled outward, touching lives in ways both visible and unseen. He had shown the world that even the smallest acts of kindness could create waves of change, that perseverance in the face of indifference could spark movements, and that remembering the past was essential to building a better future. And so, whenever doubt crept in or challenges seemed insurmountable, people remembered Walter. And the day Chuck Norris stepped out of a black SUV to remind everyone of the power of standing firm in your beliefs. They remembered the flags, the laughter-turned apologies, the crowds gathering around a humble stand, and the realization that no one is ever truly alone in their fight for what's right. Walter's story became a timeless reminder that courage, compassion, and community have the power to transform not just individual lives but entire worlds, and in that truth his spirit would live forever.